Welcome to our podcast, Untangled Roots. Have you ever asked yourself the question, why am I here? Well, if you have, welcome to the starting point of the best part of your life. Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Cassie. Join us as we share our perspective from our personal journey of untangling from everything that we're not. Let's go, truth seekers. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome back.
Again, I was doing something weird.
That's okay. That's going on there. Welcome back for yet another episode. Okay, episode 7.
Hot dog. Hot dog.
So we are going to dive into talking about fear. I mean, let's just, we're going to start a series. We're going to do a couple videos on this because there's a lot to unpack. And if you guys have questions or just curiosity as to, maybe a more in-depth story, just reach out. We'd love to share. So, should we just dive in?
Absolutely.
So, I kind of wanted to just kind of talk about what a tangled root looks like that is laced with fear. So, if our whole motto for Untangled Roots is, you're learning as you go, and you're basically each step of the way we're learning, growing, and untangling. And untangling is when you're letting go of things that are not you. And so how do you identify if you have a tangled root, right? Well, we all do. We all have trauma. We all have pain. And those are just more of the common tangles. Well, fear, let's talk a little bit about fear. So fear is actually paper thin. It really is. It seems really like when you're in fear or if you're surrounded by fear, it feels very real. And it feels like that is what is happening right now. But if you look around fear, you'll realize that it is literally paper thin. It's just a figment of your imagination / it's an energy that comes in and completely takes over your system, basically. And I have learned in my own experience that fear is one of the biggest ways to get stuck. Honestly, most of my stuck points in life are rooted in fear, and it's just the reality of it. There's several different types of fear of abandonment, fear of judgment, fear of self, even fear of love. Basically anything that is good, put the word fear on it, and that can be a reality for someone. Because as humans, we tend to be afraid to receive something good, honestly, which is super interesting. But I feel like that's where fear gathers. So a tangled root to me looks like somebody that's living from a place of fear. And it can look differently for each person, but for me in particular, there's been different times where I have stayed stuck for many, many, many months and sometimes even years on different situations. And I'll just do a quick story, I guess, about one of the ways that fear has really affected me in my life is fear of abandonment. And that one has been very huge, stemming from childhood. And so for me, it came because when I was little, there were things going on in my home to where I was left alone a lot. And I didn't have the tools or the ability to know how to, I didn't have that safety net yet for myself, or like what they call self-soothing, to actually be confident in being alone. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. To where I was afraid to be alone. I didn't want to be alone, and I was like basically forced to be alone. So I remember like when I was little, I would have these thoughts. They were debilitating thoughts in my head. I mean, we're talking 5 years old, 6 years old, where I would be like, oh my goodness, like a bear is going to come in my house. Like, right? Just these like, and my mind would like create these like huge catastrophes in my mind, like, oh my goodness, like this is gonna happen, this crazy thing's gonna happen, these people are gonna die, like all this fear-laced thoughts would plague me when I was little, because when I was alone. And I didn't know until later when I got into healing that was my body's way of manifesting fear of abandonment. And what's actually interesting about fear is it's actually can be a protection mechanism, right? So fear isn't all bad. Like, if you see a cougar or a bear or something coming to attack you, your innate response is terror, right? It's like a fear response, which is basically open up the adrenaline, right? Give your body this flush of hormones to get you out of the situation as soon as possible. That is how fear can be used positively, right? As a protection. When it lingers for longer than the moment, that becomes where it starts getting laced in your root, and it starts becoming a part of your identity if it goes on for a long time.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And what came when you said, or it came to me, like a couple things came up. One, I think what you were processing has to do with the self-agency part or what you were sharing, how you're sharing. It reminded me of like the self-agency part of like if a child's safety. I don't know, it just paralleled with like the reality of how does someone, and this, I'll speak for myself, this is how I've learned about fear, is like, how am I in relationship to it? Like, am I gonna choose, which is a thing from the root that you're talking about, am I gonna choose to move forward from a fearful place? Which I think when it's tangled up in that root, what you're talking about, like the root of self. So like that root is, to me, it's identifying something of importance to a person. Like family is a really deep root for me. So it's like, okay, if there's fear in my relationship to family, then that's probably going to impact how I'm going to show up to them, which ultimately is not what I want in my life. I want to love them. I want to be there for them. I want to, I want to show my love. I want them to know that I love them. You see what I mean? So it's like, anyway, that's just what, it's like, oh, if I can choose to operate or be mindful of it, but that's when you're talking about, like, you have to really do the work to untangle it.
Yeah.
So the second thing that I was feeling was vulnerability, and it highlighted around when you said fear wants to like prevent you. It's like where we're most vulnerable is what I feel like. It's like that, because that energy can make me not want to show my heart. And I use the family root to my family because of whatever it says, because they're not going to love me. They're not going to see me. They don't want to, which is a lie. Like that's no one's heart. Like, so anyway, those are the two things, like self-agency and being in a relationship to the root that it's attacking. And then why is fear attacking? I say attack, it's kind of an intense word, but it just comes in like a filter. And in my experience, I think that I ran the parallel to what I shared in the last episode about that fear came in, but it was like through my mind. But then like ultimately what I learned was to listen to the opposite, and that's what my heart was telling me. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting. I don't know. That's just what came when you shared.
Yeah, there's so many different times in my life that fear has been the culprit for keeping me stuck or making me believe something about somebody else or myself that ultimately isn't true. And it's just basically making me believe that. So, for example, fear of judgment. Like, as humans, we care. Like, we can say, oh, I don't care what anybody thinks of me.
Do.
But at the root of it, we really kind of do, because that is part of what's built in us.
To naturally connect.
Yes.
To want to connect and want to be interconnected.
Right.
In a healthy way.
And so if your reputation is at risk, or people might think something of you, or there's rumors going around, like people will, or it'll make you feel like, oh, these people think I'm all this stuff, and you're fearing their judgment so bad that you have this huge story in your head that tells you this, that, and the other, and they might not even be thinking it, which is the funniest part. I've dealt with fear of judgment for a long time. I've been a part of the rumor mill. I feel like anytime you're outspoken or different in some way, I mean, we're all different in our own ways, but like, I mean, like really different in the sense of like willing to basically speak your truth that may be really foreign to somebody else, or it doesn't align with what they think you should believe or think. Boldness comes with people being shook, and that's how fear is triggered in them, by your boldness.
And to add to that, what came to me when I was processing just as we've been creating these podcasts, for example, like I read a book or whatever about like, I think it's called like The Artist's Way or whatever, but I've just, whenever I've like studied people who create something, people who actually put something out there from their heart, like the creative process is such a vulnerable, like it really is vulnerable, okay?
Yeah.
I'll speak for myself. I am not super confident to sit down in this kitchen and like, you know, I'm not super confident, but my heart is to want to create something that is of value. So it's not going to be perfect. No, I'm not going to be the best video editor. Like, you know, all those things. But at the end of the day, like, it's what I'm creating. And so I think that's why fear wants to come in and make me not want to share my heart, which I haven't in a lot of ways. And so I think when someone creates anything, which I think is what you're talking about being bold, because the world, we honestly consume a whole bunch. Our world, it's more natural for the human body to consume than it is to create.
Yeah.
Because it takes energy. You have to generate energy to create something. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it's like you have to like actually generate something inside of you, which if you haven't been in alignment, and I'm talking to my past self, I did not create the energy in myself to know how to share, to know what I would share, because I had fears thinking that I wasn't good enough, thinking that anything, whatever is like mimicking or whatever is like making me stay shut. I know you're being
Okay, I gotta cut this out. Thank you, Fridge, for your service.
Whatever is making me feel quiet, that is what I have stopped at. I've stopped at a lot of stuff. Even if it's creating a conversation with a friend. Like, it's whatever it takes from, like, the inside. It's like, here's a little piece of myself. Like, this is coming from me, of how I feel helpful, love, whatever. It's vulnerable in that creation process. And I think that that's how I see what you said about being bold.
Yeah.
Because it's just a matter of, here's a piece of my heart. You get to do whatever you want to it, and I have to be okay with not being impacted by it in a large way. Like,
yeah.
Anyway, does that make sense?
Absolutely. I feel like anytime you're going to be coming out with stories or anything about your personal journey, it's extremely vulnerable, and I feel like that's why even doing this podcast has been kind of a struggle for a while, because it was almost like we didn't know, like, if we're just kind of real about some fears that we've dealt with, like even just in this process. I've personally been like, I don't know how people are going to react. I don't know, you know what I mean? And like that will start fear, but it's like, if you live your whole life,
I don't do anything.
Right.
I've stopped doing things. And that's what I'm saying. Like, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
I can keep going. But
no,
it's like you stopped, like it stops progress. Is that what you're...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It completely keeps you stuck. And so we have a heart to call out fear. And my thing is, if I'm afraid of it, then it's obviously worth doing.
Man, I go into it if I'm afraid.
We just dive in.
That's probably, I think
that's why you met me, because it's like...
I think that's our core. Untangling the roots. You gotta face the fear to go down into it. That was deep.
Yeah. So honestly, if you're afraid of it, there's a reason, and it's obviously worth doing if you're scared of it. Because
I would really...
there's something under the fear. Like, fear is a message.
Yeah.
Fear is a message. So it's a response that we have
internally. Yeah. Internal system.
Yep.
Keep going.
You have a lot to say.
I do. I'm just all filled up. But you're 100% on it. It's important. You wouldn't sense it in your system if it wasn't important, if it didn't carry a message. And I think that, like, that's what I've learned, and that's the fun part of fear. And I'm not trying to make fear fun. That's not what I'm saying. But that is the empowered. That is how, on my journey, I have learned to be empowered by fear, which is, I'm like, okay, this is telling me something. If my whole system is responding to something, this is important to me. That is my system talking to me. And it's, okay, I'm sure you all have heard that you get to choose. Like, when we have a choice, that is our greatest superpower. That is our greatest superpower that is taken for granted, and it's abused, and it's we've lived at the affect of that choice. But we all have a choice in any matter, literally. And so in that choice, you get to choose if and this is what so it's like I get to choose. Even if something comes across, I get to choose, am I going to choose a love or am I going to choose fear? And that's the ultimate choice to me. That is the ultimate choice. And however that is expressed is unique to each individual person, wherever they're at. But it's like, I really want to encourage whoever's resonating with this to look at where there is fear, go into that root, and what do you need to do to choose fear? What do you need, to choose love, to not choose fear? What do you need in that root, whatever that may be? Anything that you value, that's where fear attacks. Anything that's important to your heart, you got to address it. Like, you got to address it, otherwise your life is not progressing in the way that you want, where you want it to go.
Yeah, so Jamie's on fire today. So what do you guys think? Should we ask Jamie if she has a fear to face right now, currently? Do you have any active fears that
Very good question.
you want to go into and just kind of show the listeners how we process fear? Jamie processes fear differently than I do. Like you're probably knowing by now, she's a little bit more analytical than I am. She thinks things through very thoroughly. I, on the other hand, am more emotionally driven, where it's like I will verbally process and realize that I know fear well enough that it's like, okay, you have no place in my life right now, that I'm able to kind of just plow through it. Mm-hmm. But it's super interesting. So let's see if we can actively do what kind of fear. It can be a small one or whatever.
Honestly, the first one that comes is because I'm creating this. I'm choosing to create Untangled Roots podcast episodes. I'm choosing to create this experience. Literally every time I upload, I have fear. Like every time I upload.
That means it's probably hitting someone, hopefully.
But it's the fear of, and with that, it's who am I going to share it with? Like, so like the fear of if I share it on my personal page or whatever.
Okay.
That's where I was trying to get. Like, it's like fear of sharing it on my, I'll say on my personal page.
Okay, girl.
Yeah.
So you know what you need to do.
Such a vulnerability junkie. She loves going for it. Okay, anyway, yeah.
So she knows what to do now, because in order to push through this fear, what does she need to do, guys?
Yeah.
What does she need to do? She needs to face it. So Jamie, can you tell the class how you're going to face this fear?
Wow.
There's only one way.
So, yeah.
Well,
really obviously, the action is to share it on my personal page, obviously. But I do think that in that, I do typically tend to, this might be a safety protection or whatever, but I tend to at least craft the narrative of how I'm going to share it. And I haven't done this yet, so don't ask me this question, but that's typically, it's crafting the narrative, honestly, to where it's like I'm sharing the core of my heart. Like I'm sharing the core of why I'm doing this podcast, or of why I'm sharing what I like, the nuggets that I have learned along the way. And I also, in that process, I also want to get my heart prepped for not needing someone's approval and not needing, or someone's disapproval, like to where I'm more in a neutral place. Mm-hmm. And I think that because it's so vulnerable, I'm not real positive if I'm in a place to where I can take that step from a neutral place, if that makes sense.
But why do you have to be neutral?
Because I don't want to be impacted either way.
So there's two fears here.
Great.
So what's happening right now is, so she's kind of showing you lightly her process of how she's like identifying this fear. So she's realizing, okay, wait a minute, I'm not really ready to be there. Okay. So if you hit a part where it plateaus, in my experience, that means there's another fear that's coming with it. So what would be something underneath that? What are you fearing is going to happen? Are you fearing that people are going to come at you and respond negatively about you coming out and sharing?
I feel like it's just being seen.
Okay.
Like I feel like a big part of a fear that has tried to keep me down is the fear of being seen. And I don't know what that, like,
what the root is.
I don't know what I'm sure I believe that honestly, fear attacks our greatest gifts.
Yes.
So that's what I believe personally, is like, which is why I'm doing, like, that's why I want to do this, is because it's important, I guess. So the seen, there's something in the me being seen part that I guess I might have a belief around what does being seen mean or something.
Do you feel like if somebody sees you, you have to expose all parts of you to the world? Or is there something...
It's going to change the way that they change the way that they think about me.
Okay, so you're trying to... So this is interesting, because fear can actually piggyback with this people pleaser, which we talk about. And people pleasing is actually, honestly, just you not knowing how to process something within yourself. It's like borderline insecurity. It's like there's something in you that is not brave enough for whatever reason to come forward, or you don't want to hurt someone, or it's coming from a good place, I believe, right? It's like the heart intention is pure. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, and what just came is that it's almost like, because like social media, for example, it's like that those, like the majority of the people in my personal have, like, they're my people in my life up until now, and they're people that I don't live by anymore. I have personally moved a lot. I have developed really amazing connections all over the country. Like, I really have, and so I'm not actively in their life as much as my heart wants to, and I have heart connections to all of the people, and they know who they are. Like, I really do genuinely am grateful for every single person in my life, and so it's almost like, how do you update? I guess it's just like sharing and updating, like, when someone grows and someone changes, even though I feel like I haven't grown and changed a whole bunch, but I think that it's like, oh,
you have.
Yeah, I guess I have, but I feel like I guess I want to believe that my heart hasn't as much as much as someone is able to see my heart and see, like, who I am. I don't know. I guess it's just the vulnerability of oh, I don't know. It's just like, oh, who does Jamie think she is? Type of lies, or like. But I also know that I'm going to receive really positive, really, really positive support. I also know that is true. Like, both are true, potentially. I for sure know that I will receive positive support.
Okay. But, so, can I insert my little, no, this is an encouragement.
Okay.
I don't have to go in any deeper.
Okay.
So, I know. So,
here
she is processing, and she's like a vulnerable mess, not a mess, but it can feel like a mess inside, where she's like sitting here.
Chaotic.
And so it's vulnerable. So it's like, I can see that maybe some perspective could be helpful, to where the people that respond negatively, so take this as an encouragement, and maybe this will help untangle a little bit of that fear. The people that respond negatively, if you can view it through a lens that your truth and your light that you're shining out is so bright to them that it is triggering something or making them feel activating. I just learned that that's another word for trigger. If it's activating something in them that makes them feel uncomfortable or just unsettled, which then makes them respond to you.
I think I'm afraid of their response.
Okay.
Their triggered response. Because even as you're talking about this, I'm like, I don't even want to go into it. I don't even want to hear. I don't even care why we're talking about it.
Okay, there we go. So we're on it. Yes.
Like, it's like, why do we need to talk about it? Why do we have to talk about it?
Yeah. So if you could encourage yourself in that in that space, and just hold yourself there for a minute, to where separate their response from what you're doing.
Which is what I was trying to do mentally, but emotionally.
Yeah. So emotionally, it's very easy for us as humans to take something somebody says to heart, because we actually do care about what they think.
Oh,
I'll give an example. I do care. I know.
I do care, and that's probably the vulnerability. Oh, that is the vulnerability.
Yep.
That is the vulnerability, that I will care, and that's okay.
There you go.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool because it's like, of course I'm going to care.
Yep.
Of course humans are going to care. Like, why is that bad? And that's not bad to care.
Yeah. So what you're watching right now is her reasoning with herself and just basically encouraging herself, which is a huge part of, she's almost to the end of this tangle. And so she's just about getting there to where what comes next is she's going to feel very confident.
I feel like a little monkey, but actually, this was real.
Yeah.
This was very real. But like the fact to see.
Yeah.
That it was.
And so now she can go on her page and post this and feel a little differently.
Because I feel like it, like I feel like, I don't know, I guess I feel kind of at peace of like, I'm still nervous, but it's not as like, don't do it. There's like a layer of like.
The nervous is good.
I don't know, it just kind of validates my own heart. My heart feels validated in that, of course you're going to care. Like, because you're human. Like, I don't know.
And you care.
That's so funny. And you care. Like, you really do care. You're not trying to harm people.
Yeah.
So if someone is harmed, if someone thinks something or whatever, like, I don't know.
And
I don't know. It's a very, very nuanced energy. Okay, when I'm talking to it is so delicate. Like, I'm probably saying these words and it doesn't like, I know, I feel like I'm saying these words and it's not like super, it's like, well, yeah, you just said that people care about people. But I'm saying, no, I like felt it.
Yeah.
I felt my heart was comforted by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like within myself, like, I don't know, it like switched something.
Yep.
Like something switched to where it was a bad thing. Like, I care about what people think, to like energetic process, and I was like, oh, I care.
Cute.
I care about
cute.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yes.
But that's how it feels.
It does make sense. And and that's just it. When people care so much, I feel like they can get really plagued with fear a lot. Like, and you learn over time how to quickly process those. It gets easier once you can untangle some roots. And then if something similar happens to where a root was once tangled, it might trigger a little response in you, but then you'll be able to work through it quicker. And that's what, I just shared with her earlier that I had a situation happen where somebody said something about me that was totally, I feel, completely against my character. Like, it just didn't make sense to me that my brain couldn't even process it as like a bad thing. Because when somebody doesn't know you and doesn't know your heart and know your intentions, it's almost like their opinion of you doesn't have as much weight. Yeah. Does that make sense? So, yeah, it's super interesting how, like, somebody was talking about me in a context of, watch out for her, be careful. Like, she's bad news. And I'm like, oh, I am? You know, like, why does this person think I'm bad news? Well, for me, I want to go and contact this person. Like, literally, like, that's how I operate. Like, I'm, like, straight to the source.
You really do that.
And so I have no fear to figure this out. Like, I would love to call this person and be like, hey, how's it going? I know this person, not super well, but I do know this person. And I have no idea why they're saying this to people. And so I want to say, is there something I did to, and this is actually a good thing, like if someone in your life, if you want to confront someone, I know that there can be a lot of fear around confrontation. And so maybe I'll give you an example of like, because I might actually do this. I'm actually thinking about it. Like, so I'll call her up and be like, hey, I just wanted to, I'm the type of person that I just like to come straight to the source if there's an issue. And I just wanted to come straight to you and ask, do you have an issue with me? Or is there something that I did personally to offend you? And if there is, I would like to know so I can make that right. Because I don't like to know that there's these lingering false truths out there about me. It's like, I'm the type of person, if you have an issue with me, just come to me, right? Just come to me, come talk to me. Like, it's okay. Like, everybody hurts people. Right. Everybody hurts people. I'm sure I've offended many people that would never confess or fess up to the fact that I offended them. And it probably was a misunderstanding, to be honest. Like, because I am kind of bold and I say stuff, and sometimes my words come across to maybe whatever, like, I don't mean to. I don't come from a place of trying to harm or anything, but sometimes people can receive it that way. And the truth of the matter is we cannot be responsible for the way that somebody receives us.
Can't. And a big truth that is highlighting in me is that, along what I've learned to be in a relationship to, is that I can't make someone feel anything. I can't make someone feel love.
Right.
I can't make someone feel happy, and I can't make someone feel sad or upset or whatever. And vice versa, that you can't make me feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we just can't, like, feelings, honestly, like what I just experienced in myself, it's like, am I willing to be vulnerable with myself? Am I willing to experience the energy of love? Am I willing to experience the give and take of joy? What does that mean? Like, and I don't know, that just came after you, like, we're sharing. It's like, can't be responsible for, it's not that we can't, it's not only that we can't, it's that, or that we're not responsible for, it's like we can't influence, and no one also can influence how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I know.
Even though it is way easier to say, you were a turd and you made me mad, and so I'm gonna be meh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in this little pity party. You made me feel bad. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can't, like, and I do my best to not operate in that, but I do unconsciously. And so it's like, okay, how can I be conscious of that? But I think, like, a big part is, like, reclaiming the part of self-agency and reclaiming what it means to love self, what it means to love yourself. It's like, okay, I'm going to be responsible for my own response. I'm going to be responsible for my own actions, which is in episode, I don't even know, 2 or 3 or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it was like, no, like, when I was triggered, it actually made it worse when I acted out of that trigger, because it's not who I want to be in my family's life.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so, like, anchoring in the truth of, like, I can't make anyone feel anyway. I can hope that they receive the positivity from me. Like, I hope, because that's what I'm trying to put out, and that's what you're saying when you're bold. You're trying to put out good stuff. But that ultimately
We all fall short.
We all fall short. And prioritizing to what extent do connections actually have clout in our internal system. It's like, okay, how much weight am I going to put behind resolving this?
Right.
Which is what I feel like you get to answer with your question. It's like, how much weight and energy am I going to invest in this? Obviously, if it's someone who's extremely close to me and there's, like, a misunderstanding, like, I'm like, let's do this. Like, let's go. Like, let's face it. Let's go in. Like, you are very important to me. Like, I want you to know this, and I'm committed to resolving this through and through. Otherwise, it's like, okay, that, and then otherwise it's like, if there's more distant connections, that's what my heart is learning to do, which I feel like is probably what I'm post-processing from the fear of me sharing on my personal page, which that's just kind of silly, but it just is a thing that I was experiencing. Yeah. So it's like, okay, then to what hearts am I going to be okay with processing whatever comes up,
mm-hmm.
and, like, prioritizing in self, because I feel like if I do all of it, it's way overwhelming. Anyway, does that make sense?
Yes. And I feel like, to wrap up this episode, I feel like the moral of the story is to start untangling these roots of fear. Look at your closest relationships. Look at the things that are closest to your heart, and start there and figure out, like, why haven't I moved forward on this? Why is this relationship at a plateau? Why is that, right? Like, and start working through those, and you'll be actually very surprised at how much freer. Like, would you say that you feel a little bit more free right now?
Yeah, I
like
do.
Just to be able to, like, recognize it and to start working through it and just call it out.
Well, because I brought light to something that was unconscious. It was, like, hidden in the dark.
Yeah.
it was able to, like,
you're gonna shine a flashlight.
Yeah, it was like shining a flashlight, and so now it, like, can't control me. I get to still consciously navigate the nervousness, like.
Yeah, nervousness is way better than fear.
Yeah, it's from a more empowered place.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
So we're going to close up here, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask and just engage with us. We love engagement. We love to hear different stories and
what's resonating with you.
We're going to start pretty soon welcoming people onto our podcast, and so we can hear other stories and how other people have navigated different things in their life. And so we're excited to kind of just keep growing with you guys and learning as we go. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.